Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, I get to sit down and talk energy medicine with Dr. Allison J. Kay. She is a mastermind body energy healer and the author of 4 books. She talks all about chakras and energy and how we can have power to be able to restore energy, not only within our bodies, but the energy around us too. This is such an important concept when it comes to health, healing, and wellness. And I think oftentimes it's a topic that we don't talk enough about or that there's a lot of misunderstanding around. Dr. Allison joins us today to really tackle all of these subjects, and it's just a great conversation that I know all of you will enjoy. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoy this episode of Beyond the Basics Health Academy podcast. Remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. And follow us, One Agora Health, on Facebook and Instagram to stay updated. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Basics Health Academy podcast. I'm so excited to get to sit down today with Dr. Allison Kay, and we're going to talk all about energy. And so hello, Allison, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Megan. You guys check out, for my listeners, check out her background. She's both a chiropractor and a nurse practitioner. And I said to her when I asked just now before we started recording, I've never heard that combination. Isn't that cool? So she works out of a holistic clinic in Minnesota. And I'm not going to run this interview, but I just want to let you go now.
Well,
it's fascinating.
I love it because I just love like the whole concept too of us just getting to know each other and really sharing our backgrounds and our passions with our listeners. So I love it. Well, I would love for my listeners, for you to just give sort of that quick synopsis of yourself and how you work with people with the mind, body, and energy, and just really how you approach health.
Okay, so I'm going to do this in what Americans love. I'm going to give bullets.
Okay.
Okay, so went into college for my bachelor's as a psych major. My mom had seen how good I was with people naturally. So she said that and suggested psychology. Intuitively felt yes. So I went in as a psych major. 3 semesters in, I was like, no, you're not teaching me how to be the most happy, thriving version of myself or ourselves. This is all about proving yourself as a science and application of it to industrial management or HR. You're not talking at all about. So I left the major and have been looking at holistic practices ever since then. Lived in Asia for 10 years studying subtle energies. And I came back with the mission after that and I had already been running energy medicine and holistic health and wellness sessions alongside my teaching career. I eventually was an English lit major, and so I was studying human sociology and psychology through an art form. So I used that to go back in the classroom. I have a master's in public administration because I was focused on helping get people elected to office who are going to help protect the environment. I really hit my stride with that. And because I really hit my stride, they kept putting me in more intense campaigns. So I ended up learning how to meditate, had a book jump off a shelf when I was walking through a bookstore while I lived in San Francisco during this time. So that's when I learned to meditate. And I took to it so naturally that I began to even teach it. So now I travel overseas for the second or third time. I've done a lot of that. Then came back, got the master's, saw that the field wasn't ready of humans in the marketplace to let go of the amount of dependency on fossil fuels at the time. So I asked, okay, how does it get any better than this? Like, where is the change possible? And I got with one by one with people's consciousnesses. So then I went into the classroom. And I also taught meditation and Qigong to middle school students and high school students eventually, and was running the energy medicine sessions alongside. And so then I hit a point where I was having a great session with a woman in a package of 10, like third or fourth, both totally thrilled with the results she was getting. And I was like, okay, how can I get even better, more robust results for my clients? And that aligned at the same time with me with minimal student loans after my master's in the classroom teaching, not digging this sense of feeling caged for decades to come, not having affluent abundance and adventure in my life. So those two things created me finding out about what took me over to Asia to then teach in an international school and become an administrator there, still running energy medicine and holistic health and wellness sessions alongside to expats and local Chinese. I was in Taiwan, but also teaching. Ultimately, they asked me to create a psychology elective, and then they asked me later to AP Psych. So I was revisiting the hardwiring and developmental psychology after having all the training in consciousness and the subtle energy system, which was really helpful to then come back to the West with my two missions of, man, if people in the West knew how much more thriving and joyous we could be and how much less suffering if they were to just go inward and work with their consciousness and understand the power in the subtle energy system, the way 5,000 years of ancient wisdom in India and the traditional Chinese culture do, there'd be so much less suffering in the West. And then the second mission is to professionalize the field of energy medicine. So people aren't doing like energy work, or I'm going to send you energy, or like throwing it at family members because they're so excited to have learned it, who are in total resistance, you know, and having it coupled and commingled with like weird psychic readings, or, you know, just really professionalizing the field because it is a science.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to throw a loaded question at you right away, but why do you think we are so resistant to it in the West?
So that's a really interesting and loaded question for sure. And we could spend an entire episode on that. One of the things that wants to, let me just tune in instead, make sure I'm going with what will serve you and the listeners the most. It is that, okay. My first book traces back to this. And for those of you who are in the holistic health and wellness field, Megan and I were talking about this ahead of time. This is going to be, my first book is going to be the one you're going to want to go to right away. What if there's nothing wrong? It was published through Hay House. It's on Amazon. I wrote that as starting as my dissertation because I ultimately have a PhD, and it became this book. And I was talking about, man, if us in the West understood what I already said. But Megan, where it led me was to answering your question. And I didn't expect that at all. That's how it became a book and beyond my dissertation. Much of it was the coming in of the organized church and the then ensuing separation of church and science with their domains, and that the supernatural, so we had alchemists, we had ancient wisdom, but they went underground once the church became organized. And the church, in fact, even annihilated not the Freemasons, but the Knights Templar, who were kind of understanding the ancient wisdom and had been to Jerusalem and had more of a sense of the inner workings of the human, whereas the Catholic Church came in and it was a form of control over society and governing, and so it did a lot of fear-inducing. And then science covered the non-supernatural, that which was physical and can be measured. So it just went underground and became the secret societies in the West. But there's a particularly interesting, I didn't grow up Catholic, but when I've had, like I've treated tens of thousands of people at this point, when I've had Catholics on my table, they show this particular tone or flavor of paranoia towards their intuition or psychicness. Almost as if, and so then this spreads out into the West, almost as if I look inside my mind, I'm going to find either a monster under the bed, a boogeyman in the closet, or craziness. Whereas the basic Buddhist tenet is all human minds are neurotic. It is the nature of the mind. Here are the tools with which to work with your own particular flavor. So I feel like we run from it and we've run from it and resisted it.
Well, and I would love to use that too then as a segue that I hear a lot, is that if you do this energy work, then it interferes with your religious beliefs or your Christianity. So I'd love to touch on that because I know that that's something that's going through a lot of listeners' minds, and I get that a lot is, well, isn't energy work sort of anti-religious?
So let's call it energy medicine from here on in.
Okay.
Because it is a form of medicine, and it's so if every chakra, because you mentioned you wanted to talk about this, let me start here. If chakra in Sanskrit translated to English means wheel, a spinning, rotating wheel, there are 7 main ones in the body, as many of you probably already know, and they are meant to be turning the vital life force energy, or the chi, as in Qigong, which I'm also a teacher of, or the Ki, as in Reiki, which was my very first energy medicine, or Ka in Egyptian, Cherokees. I mean, all over the planet, people understand this, and there's these 7 subtle energy centers. I find the yogic culture the one that understands it the most. And I'm a yoga teacher trained in India. And the prana, the life force, the vital life force energy that's supposed to be running in our system is governed by the chakras. And the chakra, if you think of it like an urban center, where you know how there's interstates that go right into it, and there's all these side roads and country roads and side routes and trains and commuter rails and planes. Like, think of it as the hub that an urban center is. That's what a chakra is. And all of the, if you know the word meridians, there's only 12 or 13 in the traditional Chinese medical system. In the yogic culture, that's called nadis, and there's like thousands of them, major ones and minor ones, that all connect each chakra. But if my chakra is an urban center, if it is it is the intersection of mind, that means consciousness. So that means our conscious mind, our subconscious, and our unconscious, all. And that's some of the Western training. I can go into a little bit more if we need to. And spirit, which allows for past life. And by the way, reincarnation was written out of the Bible by the Catholic Church at the meeting of Nicaea in the 400s. They realized that if they had reincarnation as part of the church's tenet, they would lose some of the power and control. Is my interpretation of it. But the factual evidence is that it was removed. It was once in the Christian theology in the 400s AD. You can read about it. So past lives and karma, I can access the spirit component. So that's mind, body, mind, spirit, and body. So every chakra is connected to one of the major endocrine glands. So there's one of our main communication systems. Candace Pert, when studying something for a pharmaceutical company to develop antidepressants, saw that each chakra had was where on the spinal column, the biggest gathering of neuroreceptors sat to receive messaging from the brain, the neurotransmitters. So that's the electrical system. That's the other major communication system, right? So body, mind, and spirit are covered by each chakra. So I have learned to go there as the way to affect the most change. So I'm saying that because you asked me about the religious belief. I'm going to blow your minds possibly, and I'm going to just do it.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. I don't normally do this to public, just when I'm training my students. But I have had a couple of students and even clients back. It was like in the 2011, 2012. I haven't had it for a long time. Asking me, does this not conflict with my belief in Jesus? I believe in Jesus. I believe in Christ consciousness. It's a vibration. Everything subatomically breaks down to a wave, as quantum physics has proven. And if we have an insistent thought form or a very emotional moment, that collapses a wave into the physical. So everything is vibration or frequency at the subatomic level, according to quantum physics. The Christ consciousness, not the indoctrination of him on the cross and what that means for you as a Christian, but the forgiveness, the unconditional love that his life modeled. That's the vibration. That's the essence of the Christ consciousness. Here's where I'm going to blow your mind. I don't know if you've heard of the lost years of Jesus, from 18 to 30. Do you know his mother's tomb was found close to India? And there were paintings in Tibetan monasteries high in the Himalayas found in a basement. I don't remember when, within like the last 30 years or so, of somebody who looked like Jesus in a few monasteries. So he had these lost years of the lost years of Christ from 18 to age 30. And then he all of a sudden could heal with his hands. Reiki comes from India. If his mother's tomb is in Pakistan for some weird reason, or there's traces of his mother in Pakistan, I asked the question, is it possible that the healing power in his palms, those which had nails put in later, actually had the healing capacity of Reiki? There is no separation. It is the undercurrent, love. If you get the essence of any religion, beyond the control and all of the human projections onto the essence, this is the same, which I do. The light has an intelligence of its own. So if I have a client coming to me for back pain, lower back pain, I could find in the first session, and I train my students this way, that all of a sudden I'm being told, guided, seeing, and she or he is feeling activity at their knees. Ow, my knee hurts, because the light or the energy, interchangeable, and in this moment, are both going at the knee, because the light with its intelligence of the own, or the energy with the intelligence of its own, knows how to prioritize. So this isn't on me. I don't have to decide or choose necessarily. So it automatically went to the place that needs the most support first, to unravel back to where we would, if we continue to work together, eventually get to the healing of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what takes the hit if your lower back isn't strong or your core isn't strong? Your knees. So there is this sense of absolute trust and surrender that I feel like anybody with a relationship to God understands.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same.
The other thing that I think is just such an important message, it's how to work with all of this to take back the power. Because,
Yes.
listening to all of this, I think one of the things is that when you really look at how we have gotten here and how we have sort of looked at energy medicine as in its own different category, it's taken away a lot of our power, because energy medicine is something that allows us to rebuild at that fundamental level and bring in all these different avenues of health, wellness, and healing.
I love what you just said. I mean, I've written almost a full book on that concept alone, which would be my third book, which is on Audible. It's the only one on Audible, Reasonable Dragons. I came back in the second year. Voice America approached me to do a radio show on the Mayan galactic alignment in December of 2012. I was doing nothing whatsoever in my business with it public facing. I had taken some VIP clients on trips to the Yucatan. I'm on the west coast of Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, so it's just right across the Gulf. So all those Mayan ruins, I would take clients, VIP clients to, and that wasn't publicly known. So I asked for 48 hours to listen to my guidance, see about doing this. I did. It was such a strong yes. And so I then ensued to interview a bunch of, I'm looking over at my first book, a bunch of experts I had quoted in my first book, as well as experts on that December 21st, 2012 time. What did it mean? The Mayans weren't the only ones. In the yogic culture, they're called yugas and eras. And Yogi Bhajan understood that around 2012-ish is the end of an old yuga and the beginning of a new yuga. Astrology, all professionally trained and educated astrologers, not the professional astrologers understand that it's the end of the Piscean era and the beginning of the Aquarian era that we're in. So what I've come to understand from interviewing all these experts and going again and again to the Mayan ruins and asking local guides what they know about it is the old era that ended, marked by 2012, but we're still dealing with the repercussions of it crumbling. The old paradigm, the old era was about destruction. The new era that we're just starting to construct together with our choices is about construction. Recognizing that our power is in our choices that we make every single day. The law of attraction has done a lot of great work to flag people's consciousness to understand that what shows up in our lives has something to do with our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions. Where I see tons of people get tripped up in is if after the first month of focusing on their desires, they haven't manifested, they give up and they think this stuff doesn't work. There's just so much purification I've seen that's had to happen at an unconscious and subconscious level in order for a person's overall system to get more full of light and less full of old density from traumas and from conditioning and from parental imprints, et cetera. I'm saying et cetera because it's part of my training and I could go into a long list and I won't. What you're asking obviously has so much meat for a response to it. Let me get back to the central question here. It has served the old paradigm to have us project onto someone else our authority, whether it was like I already talked about the church or the government. So one of the other things, Megan and listeners, we've been seeing in the last couple of years since 2012 has been an increase in protests in the streets in countries where it doesn't usually happen. Sure in America, sure in Britain, but like Chile, parts of Russia. I mean, since when so that's part of taking back the power. That's part of each individual as a component of these times we're moving into, recognizing their own power and coming out of where there's been abuses of power, where there's been any misalignment, as everything becomes less, as life will be eventually structured from the heart, like the Christ consciousness, and organized around love and that alignment with the divine, as opposed to all of the egoic structures created by people who are out of alignment and we're looking for control and abuse of power. So it may sound really ideal, but if you take a step back and you look, you can see it. Life feels different now. It's not just time. We are in a new era, and so new tools are needed to learn how to thrive, and it's not over-reliance on the intellect. So I find myself as a person with a PhD, I deal with and work with a lot of intellectual people because I can explain this stuff to them and let the two hemispheres merge, Eastern practices and Western, for having that mind getting the information it needs, then to be able to work with it on their behalf at first, and then they take over increasingly to turn down and to turn up the power behind the heart. Like, for example, you know how you say, I'm going for it, I'm going to make that happen, I have my goals. Do you know that if you work with the heart chakra in the way I've learned to work with the heart chakra, you can have it more actively magnetizing to you? You could have increased receptivity that will help bring in what you're even just thinking about, which is how a lot of my life works now. Mm-hmm. If your consciousness is worked with in the right way, and so you end up with a certain vibrational tone to your overall field, you have more capacity to engage the greater field of all of life around you, which is beaming right now with support to help humanity in this transition. It's really easy to get trapped up on the physical surface of life and see all the suffering. Absolutely, but it's all happening for a reason. I mean, if you look at my first book's cover, The Woman's on a Mountaintop.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I say zoom out to the satellite perspective. Mm-hmm. Does that help answer your question?
Oh, it's so helpful. And I think it's really powerful too, because I think a lot of right now, I think so many people feel overwhelmed. They are going on feeling burdened by, just the last 18 months and beyond. And so I also think it would be great to really keep with this theme of power and what can people do to really start to work with this. And I know some people come into this conversation already knowing about energy medicine, but some people this might be completely new and just say, I don't even know where to start. And okay. I know you work have a program called Vibrational Upgrade, but just how does somebody start to tap into this and really utilize that support and power and energy medicine?
Okay. Much of service. If you start with recognizing you've been recently, let's say you got a text from a person and you realize that as that text came in, within 5 minutes prior to that text, you had been thinking about the person. Mm-hmm. You're saying that because you've experienced it, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So in this new era, the old one was based on Newtonian physics, where stuff was much more solid and real. Like you can predict stuff because it was much more solid and real. Like gravity, the apple fell on Newton's head. Okay, so that's gravity. A cue ball. If I hit the white ball, it's going to hit one of the pool balls. All of that was solid and real. But the times we've moved into are much more based on quantum physics, where it is more of a vibrational backdrop and an energetic backdrop, which means working with your consciousness, not as much the physical, corresponds better with this new era. You're going to have more power. So what does that mean? It means we're much more connected, which is why I started with the example of if you're thinking about somebody in the previous 5 minutes and then all of a sudden they text, it's because that's a recognition of that connectedness. And then learning how to work with your thoughts. So if there's a practice that's 5,000 years old called meditation, it seems to be a natural, logical conclusion that if I am in a practice where I am being shown how to observe my mind and my thinking, that implies, therefore, that there is another part of me that can do that. So I, therefore, am not just my thoughts. So learning how to work with that higher self, is the way it's called in yoga, is key. And that's what I mean by the conscious, you're working with your consciousness. So let me frame it. In our daily life, science has it at 15% of our daily choices. From everything I've seen in the decades of doing this work, I think it's more like at most 10%, maybe 5% of every choice we make in our lives, so that our lives are the way they are, is made from thoughts you hear. So science says it's 85%. I'm saying it's closer to 90 to 95% of the rest of the choices you are making that you are not hearing consciously, the thoughts, are done from the unconscious and the subconscious. And that's where trauma sits. That's where, when age 0 to 2, we don't even feel separate from our parents in the development of us. At 2, that's why we go, no, because we're separating into our ego mind, as it's called in the meditative practice. This is the ego mind we observe during meditation. So it's identity-based. And at 2, we're saying no because we're starting to form our identity. And then we're sitting there asking, how does life work on planet Earth? So if we want the yummy smile and loving feeling from our mom, and we notice our older brother and trying to understand how it works on planet Earth, our older brother gets that loving smile, yummy feeling from mom by doing the dishes, then we're going to have a conclusion. If I do the dishes, in fact, if I keep things clean, that leads to that yummy, loving feeling I want, which could then, if certain things then transpire later on, meaning a trauma here or more conditioning there, they may become like OCD, like really obsessive about being neat and tidy and clean. And if they need to run out of the house, they don't ever let themselves run out of the house looking at all sloppy, because I get love, is the conclusion. I get yummy feelings by being very clean and tidy. So that's a kind of unconscious conclusion about how life works that sits in the unconscious. Imprints from our parents or conditioning happens from our parents at the unconscious level. Trauma sits, like I said, at the subconscious level. I think karma is in both, but consciousness isn't just in the head, even though I'm pointing to the head. If this is about making choices, the 5th chakra, the throat chakra, sure, for those of you who already know something about the chakras, it's about communication. But I started talking in my second book, Vibrational Upgraded Conspiracy for Your Bliss. In 2016, I was starting to see a connection wanting to be made for the majority of my clients from the heart chakra to the throat. And what I came to call it is the co-creators channel, as we were evolving out of the old paradigm more and more. Because where your power is that choice. So it would behoove you to become more conscious of your choices. So I spend the clearings and activations of my energy medicine prong of the system I developed, Vibrational Upgrade System, clearing those out to bring more consciousness, so fresh, vital life force energy to the conscious mind. So I'm speeding up basically the second prong of Vibrational Upgrade System. I call it applied mindfulness, but it's basically speeding up the results of decades of meditation. So that I have certification as a personal trainer, and one of the renewal certifications I got was a specialist in behavioral change. And I mention that only because I want to let people know that this is still grounded in Western understanding. And I have, and more so because I care about permanent change. I'm not going to just have you feel more connected to your angels. No. Every piece of work I do is about, how do I thrive more in my body, in my business, in my relationships, in life right now? Not how do I leave my body and feel connected to that sense of unconditional love, because it's so hard here on planet Earth because everybody's so chaotic or there's so much suffering, we're all so overwhelmed. Instead, it's, okay, what choices am I making that are causing me to have the thought I'm overwhelmed? Well, what if I didn't go right into checking emails first thing in the morning? Okay. Yeah. So this is, it's a big tree of wisdom, right? But it does come down to making more conscious choices, because that's where our power is now. So if somebody has difficulty making choices, like I see some of my students get really, they overemphasize one choice. Like, I don't know if I'm making the right choice. It's a muscle. Just make the choice, observe the effects of the outcomes. And if it's a good outcome, make the same kind of choice. If it's an outcome not so good, Stop making that kind of choice.
Yeah.
Like, it's, let's just tone it down a little bit here. And I'm only pointing to this because the fifth chakra, the throat, the thyroid, the neck tightness, if you feel limited in your life or you have no choice, you're burdened or obligated, this is what gets affected. But this is the one to focus on, to free you up, this one in the heart chakra, to live more effectively and thrive more in these new times, and to take back your power. The third chakra too, by the way, helps with your power.
Which chakra? The third chakra?
The solar plexus, the third. So especially if you tend to end up in power struggles with people, or you have difficulty with your digestion, or you have, meaning not so much acid reflux, that's more heart chakra related, but you have the runs a lot, like that. Anxiety sits in the third chakra, but so does joy. So working with the third chakra helps transform the overwhelm about living in the physical body on planet Earth and what you want to manifest into a more joyous approach to it all. By working with the third chakra, it can help with the overwhelm and increase your power to manifest what you desire to. So there you go. 3, 4, and 5 are the best ones to work with. Go to my website and get them. Listen to the clearings and activations that are free there, and look. You can self-diagnose on my vibrationalupgrade.com products chakra series. Scroll down and you can see all self-assessment that you can take, and then you can also listen to sample clearings and activations for each.
Well, one of the things I want to highlight about your message that I just think is really important is you talking about that subconscious versus conscious. And that subconscious, I think a lot of people don't realize how much that does drive us, and that a lot of the trauma in our body and a lot of the things that we're holding on to are all subconscious. But we can then work to use the conscious to help to be able then to overdrive some of those systems and to change. And so I think that that's a really important message to highlight to people.
Thank you. Well said. And that's why I started to even talk about the throat chakra, because I don't want you to think that everything work with your consciousness only is at your head, because chakra here, chakra here, chakra here, chakra at the heart, chakra at the upper belly, chakra at the lower belly, chakra at the tailbone. And so if any of your mind, body, or spirit is engaged in feeling like you're limited, you have no choice, or overwhelmed, some of that will go to the throat chakra, which means you're going to have bodily effects. So your consciousness runs throughout your body. That's what universal life force is, or chi, or prana is. So I do too, Megan. I feel like I am so grateful for what you just said. It's a key part of understanding where our power is that subconscious and unconscious. Like when you go to a party and maybe you're a single woman and you want to come out of the bad boy thing, and you want to start dating a more sensitive guy, and you recognize your own preference to, I tend to like the alpha males, but that doesn't work out very well. So let me see about making a new choice. Let me go for the more sensitive guy. But you walk into the party, and even if that's already conscious, then it's easier for your conscious mind to then choose, let me not look at that alpha male that's really hot, but let me go over here and look at that sensitive guy and appreciate his hotness and talk to him. If you've done no clearing work in your consciousness, you're going to walk into that party and you're never going to see the sensitive guy. Because it's not on your peripheral, because your consciousness hasn't been opened enough yet. That's how blocks keep us at the unconscious, subconscious level, not creating new life and new patterns.
And the other thing I want to highlight from this that I think is so important is the other fact of, just like you're saying, the reason this work is so important is because the cards are stacked against us. I mean, from what you talked about, we were bombarded by way more than we ever used to be, and the fact that we can be on our phones all day, we can be checking our emails all day, we're at everyone's disposal, to the fact that, there's a lot of...
Okay, hold on, Megan. Take a breath.
Yeah. So to the fact...
I hear you.
Yeah, just in general, I mean, we are bombarded. So I think that's where the work is just so important.
Yeah, just an energetic hug to you right now. I know. I love the phrase you use, at everybody's disposal, because that is what it feels like, especially as a business owner, with all, that you have to attend to. So new choices that can be made are boundaries. And then my signature program is called Magic Manifestation Money Flow, because again, I apply this work to daily life. And one of the things I love doing is helping people work with the conclusions about their choices day to day, during the day. And if you're believing that as a business owner or as a successful professional, I need to be completely accessible and give high quality customer service in order to be successful, then voila. I have had such an interesting time dancing the balance of high quality customer service with honoring myself.
Mm-hmm.
Being of service during these incredibly massive times that are so auspicious, but yet really intense. It's an interesting balance. So I've done a lot of work on my own perceptions of what it means to be a business owner, what it means to be successful, what it means. And I love to run other people through that to really clear up and reposition in a way the outward viewing of us doing our lives. So stuff can transform.
Yeah. I just love it. And I just think it's what a lot of people need right now, and really being able to sort of put that all into perspective. Will you go through, I know you've talked about this a little bit in the conversation, but tell our listeners a little bit more about where they can find your books, about the new book coming out, and also just touch a little bit more on your webpage and where they can go for some of this work.
Okay, I want to back up for a second. I'd be glad to. Thank you, Megan, for asking. You asked me a couple of questions back about how can people feel less overwhelmed and more empowered.
Mm-hmm.
That last example, that last response was how. Did you feel it like taking back the power, like, wow, I could actually structure my day a little bit differently. I could actually structure my appointments a little bit differently. I could even possibly choose a different clinic to work at if it doesn't align with wanting to have more self-care. So there's power, and it's incredibly eye-opening when working with people that they seem to be more afraid of stepping into their light and their empowerment than they are of the stuff we daily, or I don't complain, but the stuff people typically daily resist and complain about and come to me saying it's a problem that they want to fix. I really feel like people stepping into their empowerment is what they're really afraid of. It's an easier, more familiar model to have shit to, I'm going to use the word shit, have shit to resist and struggle against, like an enemy, like to fight against an external enemy. So your power is in your consciousness to change it. And then once you change it, you're going to have different stuff be noticed and available to choose, and life will change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So vibrationalupgrade.com. We have a free Facebook group. That's my website. My latest book, the fourth one, released the day after inauguration of 2021. The Dragon Master Creatrix: Conversations with a Female Spiritual Teacher for These New Times. This is a lot of people have been talking to me about this book because it's a really different model. It's not totally nonfiction like my first three are. It's told in story form from the perspective of a student of mine traveling internationally, where I house the trainings, and taking them to sacred sites and stone circles and attuning them and training them. And so it's a bit fictional, where she has like a struggle, like, do I stay in my marriage or not at the beginning? And it gets resolved by the end. So that's the first half of every chapter. The second half is in that kind of yogic, I don't want to say the word guru, but I like the yogic teacher, like the question and answer format. But they're not just questions like, how do I have a stronger sense of intuition? How do I connect more with the divine? They're not like just these out there questions. Again, they're questions like, how do I stop caring what other people think of me? So it's in their questions and answers genuinely that my masterminders, who are the ones training to be vibrational upgrade practitioners, ask. So they're really advanced. So my signature program is Magic, Manifestation, and Money Flow, and that's where people start. I have a monthly membership at a much lower price point, Activate Your Magic. All of that, look into programs on vibrationalupgrade.com. My books are all on Amazon. My third book, Reasonable Dragons, which is really concise, in audible form, people have been loving, because I just came out of, in that book when I recorded it, I'm still over in the UK, close to a really sacred spot, and you can hear it. I just finished attuning all of my students, so you can hear and feel the light that people have said. So there you have it.
Yeah, no, I love your work. And I think it's so important right now, just because it is, like you have talked about, a way for people to get back the power and
Yes.
really rebuild from the foundation up.
Yes. As says the woman who works with the spinal column.
You got to rebuild from that foundation up if you're going to get lasting changes. And I love your message too about how do we get those lasting changes.
Thank you, Megan. It's been a real it's been good sitting here with you talking.
Yeah. And I love your work. I love, your messages. And I just think that you do a really good job too of being able to break that down for people, because this, I think, is such an important concept, something that a lot of people don't talk about. And it needs to be the forefront of our conversations when it comes to how do we live our
Geez, thank
best
you.
life.
Yeah. So when I'm using like, how do we live our best life as a social media meme, people are like, because, they see it all over the place. So it's been interesting for me to dance around. I've been thrilled since about 2018 because more people are saying what I've been saying. And so I can pull back and provide less of this like holding for the collective space, this change. But yeah, it's different here. The work I do is different than other people's work along the lines in this industry. So thank you, Megan. That was really nice to receive.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with our listeners. And I remind all of our listeners to take care of yourself, be kind to others, and make good choices. Thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Beyond the Basics Health Academy podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would greatly appreciate it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure to follow us, One Agora Health, on Instagram and Facebook as well to stay updated. We hope to see you next time on Beyond the Basics Health Academy podcast. And remember to be kind to others, take care of yourself, and make good choices.